Hello there and welcome to my reaction to Songs of Six. Ah, I thought it said Sticks. Anyway, Songs of Six review, Deranged edition trademark. Always. Is it also 6 in the thumbnail? I guess I'm that blind. Alright. By Seth. Came out 2 weeks ago in his latest video. And of course I haven't been recording stuff, so I'm doing it now. And it starts on Jorma, so that's gonna be great. Let's begin, shall we?
What is the worth of a human life? I can't give you that answer, but I can tell you the worth of an elvish life. 62 meat and 17 leather, once you really peel them down. Hey people, Seth here. Despite doing this for several years, I have never figured out...
I thought about this. How many, percentage-wise, how many videos of Seth have to do with some kind of... I don't know. Not necessarily cannibalism, but like human dismemberment. I remember the video he was selling organs and stuff. Probably like 90% have to do with killing humans and other races. Let's replace the word humans with humanoids. Anyway.
How to use a microphone, and for this, I sincerely apologize. Songs of Six is an ambitiously made, self-styled city-state simulator, developed for the better part of 7 years. Now, imagine you start playing the game, and naturally, you play the tutorial. I imagine most people do. The difference, however, is that over 100 hours later, I am still on most people do. The difference, however, is that over 100
Lip Witch, Forbidden Sex Hex, Scarlet Maiden.
100 hours later, I am still on the tutorial. This is the story of Jackaton, the default starting location for the tutorial, which is named after the developer. We have no mountains, no natural resources, a sprinkle of trees, a small lake, and generally nothing. We're sandwiched between 4 neighbors, the city-states of Tegenval and Sluva, and the empires of Starless and Ulisu. In a word, it's not looking very good for us. In the beginning, you start with a couple dozen citizens and a dream of something greater.
Pixel version of civilization.
We are Crotonians. These are peaceful, vegetarian pigmen with no aspirations beyond slumming in the dirt and farming crops. But for our purposes, they're perfect.
Why not?
And I quickly started an agricultural operation. It's not much, but at least we're not starving.
But
grain
it's honest work,
by a bakery, while fruit and vegetables can be eaten directly. Regrettably, instead of a fruit farm, I started an orchard. I don't want to know what the promise that
Saudi
it's a
cartoon
slow
is.
Operation with twice the potential yield. To this day, it has produced no fruit, because by the time the fruit trees mature, I get a worm infestation and have to chop them all down. Citizens
I thought seasons
prefer
change
locals over immigrants, and the only way to increase the local population is by having children at the local nursery. In this game, a year is 16 days, and each 4 days is a season. A baby becomes a child, and a child becomes eligible for labor at 4 years of age. Songs of Six encourages the miracle of childbirth with the economic miracle of child labor. Also, after my pigmen accidentally snacked on all the vegetables in the nursery crib, I can confidently tell you infant mortality has no effect on the happiness of your population. But you know what has an effect on my happiness? Getting paid to plaster my walls with illustrations of naked women. Hang on, guys. This wall, it's so barren, so dull, so lifeless. Luckily, today's sponsor is Displate. Displate is a unique metal poster designed to capture all your passions, whether they be Elden Ring, Star Wars, Warhammer, or Call of Duty. Displate has over 2 million artworks across hundreds of brands. If you know me, you'll know I love my Displates more than any lame paper poster. But what if they could be even better? You see, I can only look at my normal posters. That's a problem. And the solution is Textra, Displate's brand new tactile poster collection. Now I can run my fingers along my precious Displates and really feel those tactile textures, 3D contours, and selective matte and gloss effects. And of course, it makes them look even cooler. The new Textra finish will be available on hundreds of the best-selling Displates, and Displate looks forward to expanding the library of Displate textures in the following months. So, what are you waiting for?
On the website.
Go to displate.com/Seth and check out the selected designs that you can now get with a new Textra finish. Transform your walls today with Textra. And thank Thank you to Displate for sponsoring this video. Your city lives and dies on happiness. If you fail to keep your citizens happy,
Okay, we
start
moved
a
on.
failure cascade that ends in ruin.
Tasman
The
Gold?
simulation goes down to each individual
Ginger
citizen
Osmond Gold?
and measures the average fulfillment of their needs and desires for that particular
Osmond
race.
Bronze.
Race is an interesting topic. Some races don't get along. Some races are predisposed to crime. Some races
that's a
control
dwarf
our educational sector,
Warcraft.
our labs, and our academia. But what else am I supposed to do when everyone else hates education? I'm talking, of course, about none other than humans. Humans are troublesome, criminal, and have the lowest sanity score of any race, which means an essential
fair.
component of any healthy human population is an asylum. But they heckin' love science, which is important because this game handles research in a unique fashion. You don't just learn something. No, you research it, and then you have to pass on that generational knowledge across time. Remember, we don't start with paper. We get to that point after multiple generations of oral tradition. And even then, we have to
Without the
maintain and
last
preserve
part,
our
it
existing knowledge
did
against
feel
entropy.
very
Almost every other race
civilization-like.
dislikes intellectualism and prefers
With the
to be
treason studying.
indoctrinated. This is advantageous as it fosters
Like
loyalty
Gale.
in the absence of happiness. An open mind is an open bussy, its gates unbarred and unguarded. Some might argue that great men are made, not
that
born.
caught me
In the
off
case
guard.
of Dondorians, that is literally true, because they appear as fully formed adults at the base of a mountain. For this reason, the only way to get Dondorians is by immigration. They're good at mining, they're good at Minecraft, they're basically dwarves. The Talapi are forest-dwelling
Yeah,
elves.
that's fair.
They're good with trees and they're good with nature. What else? They're also known for violating human men for several days before they cannibalize them. Bizarrely, this makes them compatible with a cave-dwelling Garfimi, who are
Okay.
effectively bugmen. What they lack in skill, they
Is
make
Mr.
up
House?
for with raw numbers. And there's nothing bugs enjoy more than plucking limbs from the other races. And while most cities will have a mixed population, some races don't get along with anyone. The Amevia are coastal-dwelling
There are no
lizard men.
pauses
They're
in Seth
uniquely
videos, so
xenophobic and incompatible with
this
other
often
races,
happens.
which is offset by
I'm
their
lost
impressive physique and high
with what's
lifespan.
going on.
If you want a true monocultural isolationist experience, try the lizards. Finally, there are two giant races you can't normally get. The in-lore explanation is that their populations have been decimated over the course of several great wars. If you control a region containing a
Yeah, that
haven
makes
and
sense.
satisfy their high demands, they can be convinced to join your cause. While they have
Hope
many
I'm loud
differences,
enough.
they do share a common trait. They're fucking gigantic and make for the best
It's in
shock
the name.
troops in the entire game. There's a bit of an irony in
Or
a sense that they're incredibly rare and
Classification.
almost extinct, and the best thing they're good at is getting even more extinct. The Argonash are spider leviathans with a voracious appetite. They don't care for anything except food, which may sound simple until you realize the logistical nightmare of providing 4 meals a day to every person on the map.
Ow.
The Cantors may ask for more up front, but they're easier to satisfy. Generally. Once I arrested 2 people at the same time, but only had 1 courtroom. One of the 2 arrested thieves had no legal representation. They considered this a complete breakdown of my legal system and left in disgust. But at the time, I knew none of this. I was a young blood, desperate to turn a profit and expand my settlement.
That does
YouTubers are a
happen.
prime example of making the most amount of money with the least amount of skill and intellect. In a fair society,
Why?
these are the people who
Why was it Pyro, but the channel was John Troncho? Is it every
effort
video?
to turn a profit and expand my settlement. YouTubers are a prime
Yeah.
example of making the most amount of money with the least amount of skill and intellect. In a fair society, these are the people who should be toiling in the coal mines and dying of black lung. Appropriately, I simulated this by importing Garfimi slaves and renaming them to my favorite content creators. I invested so much
Wait.
in slaves
Mr. Beast. Okay,
rename-
I found 4-hour video essay on The Witcher.
naming them to my favorite content.
But I say, shit. Would have been faster, just pressed once. Parsinical cross-dressing again.
Content
It's no longer
creator.
ironic. I'm surrounded by nonsense.
I invested so much
Okay.
into this coal mining operation, only to find out I've spent several in-game years for a tar pit with 30%
nonce was
efficiency.
spelled
It
with a
wasn't
U.
just unprofitable,
No.
but because of the size and scale, the cost of maintenance alone sent me into the red. On the other hand, I found out slavery is actually quite well received, as my citizens enjoy a slave population so long as it's not their own. My settlement grew, and unfortunately, crime had become an issue.
Understandable,
Another day,
I guess.
Another flashing. The people lived in fear. Arrests had to be made, but because I spread myself so thin, I didn't have the resources or manpower to enforce it. And so
a lot of
public
German
indecency continued until I increased my coverage. And after the prison started filling up, I am forced to make a difficult statement. Dundorians are sex pests. Of the 5 indecent exposers, all 5 have been dwarves. I have no further comment. At this point, I was earning capital by exporting furniture. This game doesn't have a fixed economy. Trade prices fluctuate and work on the rules of supply and demand. Basically, if you can make your own, that's strongly encouraged. If you have excess to sell off, that's good too, but overtrading a commodity can apply disproportionate pressure on the value, which is minimized by the number of trade partners. So, if you want money, you better diversify. But if you don't, poverty also has its advantages. If our treasury is empty and we're dead broke, guess what? Our diplomatic gifts mean a whole lot more, which is important because if our reputation drops to 0 with any of the 4 factions bordering us, we're getting invaded. And with a current standing army of 0 men, I don't fancy my chances. So I would intentionally dip my savings into the red, plead, cry, and defecate in front of my neighbors, and a pathetic display made me an unattractive target for assault. I would reputation farm into the multiple thousands so I could reliably forget about it for the next dozen years, while enjoying the benefits of almost 0 taxation on all trade. This gave me a lot of time to experiment and figure out what I'm doing. Firstly, I tried mining gemstone. Subsequently, I failed at mining gemstone. Instead, I used the natural fertility of Jacketon and turned it into an opium plantation. I still had a lot of Garfimi slaves left over and put them to work in fields of poppies and cotton. However, I got overly ambitious and my bugs got a little rowdy. There is no other situation where the following words can be said. The cotton pickers are having another uprising. Subsequently, we abolished the practice. Not on moral grounds, but because they robbed my throne and took just about everything. Happiness was at an all-time low among my Dundorians, so I tried producing alcohol and opened a tavern. Demand outstripped supply. Access was terrible and supplies were so low that it just made them angrier. So I tried satisfying food preference instead. Mushrooms, fish, complex proteins. Then I restricted everyone to just eating bread, and they were happier. Additionally, I tried introducing fine dining in the form of restaurants, and almost lost the game to a public riot. Not only did I fail to meet supply, but each time I did so, a citizen would starve, spiraling into a vicious loop. Their desire
seems like a
for
great
the
and
menu was so
stable
strong that it
game.
overrode their survival instinct to eat street food, preferring instead the embrace of death. This was not a plague of famine. It was a plague of choice. After the many lessons learned, alcohol is haram, cooking is forbidden, and our entire food pyramid is bread. Finally, I did make a breakthrough in citizen satisfaction. It turns out that when I select and look at a random peasant, they are not meant to be caked in shit. And only after building bathhouses 40 hours into the game did I make that connection. Around this time, I also realized after reading the tooltip,
I thought there's maybe inbreeding going on
of maintenance. You see, buildings have walls.
Jacket
Walls
Town,
increase isolation. I did not build any walls. Do I have to rebuild my entire city? Yes, I did. I rebuilt the whole thing. And I learned to love city planning. Building design is incredibly fun, and there's no greater satisfaction than having an elegantly designed lavatory for optimal shitting, pissing, and sharding. In the end, you take so much pride in what you've built. Am I coping? Yes, absolutely. But after numerous trials and tribulations, what you've built. Am I coping? Yes, absolutely.
Give me like 20 hours, I'm not only coping, I'm seething.
But after numerous trials and tribulations, I had a stable, diversified economy and a series of shacks resembling civilization. Also, I promoted a 4-year-old to become nobility. Because it's funny, nobles provide a variety of beneficial effects, and currently they're a work in progress. Or, as the developer translated to me, they cannot betray you yet. Everything was calm and peaceful until we found a Crotonian with his eyes scooped out. On the body was a note, signed Jake the Invincible, claiming that he's saving lives by returning them to his forgotten god. Our city had a serial killer. Another day, another victim
I don't know
found dead. Eye sockets empty. Every victim was a Crotonian, and this was clearly a racially targeted crime. Terror ruled the streets, and we had no leads.
That's kind of
interesting. It wasn't until a passerby claimed to see a Crotonian woman fleeing the scene. This information didn't add up, but we tortured a confession out of them, and they pleaded guilty to all crimes. The serial killings promptly stopped. Jake the Invincible was identified to be a middle-aged Crotonian woman predating on her own people. We sent the killer into the arena to be chopped into pieces for the spectacle of a crowd. We gave their body as much
Very
respect
Roman.
as it deserved. We pissed on it and dumped it into a mass grave. Serial killings are rare, and they're not often so straightforward. You might get the wrong guy and torture out a false confession, or the trail simply goes cold from lack of evidence. Eventually, beyond exports and fields of opium, I found the most lucrative source of cash. I would intentionally reduce my army down to 0 to try and entice rebels to attack my city. The moment this happens, I hire mercenaries, crush the invaders, and sell off their loot for fat stacks. This sent me from borderline broke to $500,000 in the bag. Now, hiring mercenaries is incredibly
Every game
expensive.
Seth plays, he
Paying them
found
is
such
even more expensive,
such weird
but they handle their own
strats.
supplies, and they're instantaneous. I use them to conquer a neutral
I wonder if he
region,
finds
and as
them
I did, my brain expanded,
himself.
and my neurons started firing.
Or he looks
because
it up.
suddenly, I can hire more. For each region under my control, I get access to 5 extra mercenary companies. So I hatched a plan. Take all my money, raise an army of mercenaries, and conquer Winsta, the weakest nation I could find nearby. With each city taken, my numbers increased, eventually laying siege to their capital. I sold everything to keep those mercenaries paid. I almost ran out of money. If that siege lasted a day longer than it did, I would have lost. But in the end, it was worth it, because I reached the max limit of mercenary companies, and I could now recruit enough men to overpower anyone. Problem is, they're asking for $750K up front, with a daily fee of $100K. Soldiers of fortune have a steep asking
None of his
price,
numbers line up,
what
but
if
okay.
the Golden Horde could pay for itself? I've been on the back foot of negotiations, pleading and groveling to my neighbors for mercy, until now. Selling my spoils, I muster a short-lived but massive army, declare war, intercept their army, and immediately sue for peace, to which they have no option but to accept my favorable terms. The best part about shotgun diplomacy is you already know the answer each time, because once they surrender, we do it again until we empty their entire treasury. Unknowingly, they just paid for their own demise. The century of humiliation was over as Jackaton turned on their allies. No longer will I be extorted each time it's their nephew's birthday.
Lord,
Tegenval
man.
and Sluva were too small to resist. The elvish empire of Starless to the north was a different story, but led to the development of strategies I'd replicate going forward. Economic hyperwar is the act of manipulating the enemy to take decisions that are numerically beneficial while destroying them internally. We invade cities, sell them back to the enemy, only to invade them again. Then we use them as bartering chips for other cities, take control of those cities, demolish the walls, and advance our front line. We remove the need for extended siege and reduce the enemy to a single fight. There was only one exception to this. As luck would have it, the human empire of Ulisu to the south had the largest standing army in the world. Even if I recruited every mercenary, I would still be outnumbered 2 to 1. So I drained his treasury and I waited. Eventually, he could no longer afford to maintain his army and fell like the rest of them. Jackaton lives by a simple proverb: feed the earth and it will feed you. But we fed the earth so much that nature herself is vomiting up red. There's too many prisoners of war and not enough mass graves to go around. The rest is morbid history as I took the rest of the map. Jackaton is now the single state empire of the world.
Tutorial
Resources
finally
are
over.
limitless. Currency is infinite, for we possess an infinite money printer, the design of which is as follows. I form a puppet state, declare war on them, take all their money from a peace treaty, invade them anyway, and install a new puppet to repeat the process. I have, in every sense, completely rigged the system, but like Sisyphus reaching the top of a mountain, I had nothing left to struggle against, and so too did I lose my interest.
Dragon's Dogma.
So I made a royal decree to arrest everyone. If you're ever interested in ending the game, just click prosecute on your main population. Guards start arresting citizens, then they arrest other guards before being arrested themselves. Prison wardens get jailed and break out of their own prisons. Chaos and pandemonium rule the day as everyone turns on each other.
That's a
and
big
eventually
grave.
they turn on me. In summary, Songs of Six has a very expansive, detailed, and enjoyable tutorial. At 160 hours of playtime, I can't wait to play the actual game. This may not take the spot for Game of the Year, as we all know that's reserved for Churn Vector, but it's a very close second. The
I wanna know
graphics,
what
the
that is.
changing
Please don't make a
seasons,
video
the
on it.
music, the scale of the simulation, considering this is written in Java, I have no words. There's no other game where the line between city builder and sociopathy is so blurred. To demonstrate this, for my second playthrough as the Garfimi, I proposed a novel
that's
form
every
of
game
meat
when you
production.
play it, Seth.
It's less of a ranch or a pasture, and more of a tilapia nursery. For reference, at a consumption rate of half an apple a day, a fully grown tilapia child costs us 32 apples, but gives us twice that amount in meat and leather. And once they're adults, we arrest, execute, and butcher them. The tilapia child to tilapia soup pipeline is highly effective. And while my humans don't agree with cannibalism because they're bigoted chuds that can't grasp the richness of Garfimi culture, their stomachs can't complain. So, what have we learned today? 1. Prisoners are the ultimate cash crop. Labor is a resource, and so are they. 2. Look past people and their differences, and see them instead as a source of protein. 3. Much like real life, retirement is economically unfeasible and exists only as a carrot and stick to motivate the working class. I give this game my highest recommendation. I give it no days of food out of we're about to starve. And because it's mainly one guy and not a corporate entity, I can just ask for a sale. If you're interested, it's 20% off on GOG and Steam for the rest of April. The first 100 to use the link win a free chemical castration
I'm recording it in May,
prefrontal
so
lobotomy.
it's
Terms
too
and
late.
Conditions may apply. As always,
Even if
more
I wanted
content
it.
to come, so stay tuned. A warm thanks to the many members of the Merchants Guild, generously funding and bankrolling these videos. You're all truly wonderful. Have a good one.
I don't want a montage of this. A hole again? Yeah, there was a hole. There. What are these holes? When it was zoomed in earlier, it was pulsating. Oh, these like that. Ew. Okay, I think I'm gonna be done on that note. Good lord. Yeah, I feel like every game Seth plays and finds is very short path to sociopathy, as he called it. I don't think there's just a way around that for him, in my humble opinion. I don't think I have anything else to say, so thank you everybody for watching this. I appreciate it a lot, and I hope to see you next time, and goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.